The Juneau World Affairs Council, in cooperation with 360 North, presents Unrest in Southeast Asia, a Thai activist's perspective, with Sulak Sivaraksa. Sulak is a social, humanitarian, ecological, and spiritual activist who champions nonviolence. He is a founding member of the International Network of Engaged Buddhists, author of several books, and has been a political prisoner for criticizing the Thai monarchy.
Thank you again. Should I speak now or dance first? The term Southeast Asia, in fact, is political. It was coined during the Second World War. That area before that was known either Further India or Indochina. In the Second World War, the area which was occupied by the Japanese Imperial Army was called Southeast Asia by the Allies, with its supreme command situated in Kandy, Sri Lanka, or at that time Ceylon, with Lord Louis Mountbatten as the supreme commander. That's the first time the word Southeast Asia was created. And the word remains political ever since. Because after the war, when the Americans were afraid of the communists, after having found NATO in Europe, they founded CETO with the headquarters in Bangkok. CETO is Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. Strangely enough, Southeast Asia then consists of, member of CETO consists of the Philippines, which was a former American colony, Thailand, although it was never a colony, at that time very much under American hegemony. And in geographical Southeast Asia, there were only two countries, the Philippines and Thailand. Yet member of CETO include Pakistan, great follower of the American Empire, the United Kingdom, also following the American leadership, plus Australia and New Zealand. That's CETO. It lasts until the threat of communism disappears, so CETO also disappears. Then, again with American urging, now there is now an association of Southeast Asian nations, known as ASEAN. ASEAN started, again, Philippines, Thailand, then the former British colony joined. They refused to join CETO, but they joined ASEAN. That is Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. That to begin with, that ASEAN. But later on, after the Vietnam War, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos also joined ASEAN. Then Burma. Burma used to be under South Asia. Now Burma also ASEAN. Lately, there is also Brunei. So this is Southeast Asia. As I said, politically consists of all these countries. Now, you want me to talk about unrest in Southeast Asia within half an hour. Very American. Perhaps I start with my own country, which I never call Thailand. I call Siam. The word Thailand itself creates unrest. Now, if you call Great Britain, England, the Welsh and the Scottish would be rebelling. And likewise, Siam is a geographical term. Of course, the majority of people are Thai, but they are non-Thais, particularly in the south. They are Malay Muslim, next to Malaysia. And one we call it Thailand, that beginning of the unrest. Since 1942, the man, although the country was never colonized by the West, our people colonized it themselves. Great Thailander admired Hitler so much. And since Hitler called his country Deutschland, So we call ourselves Thailand since 1942. And we declare war against the Allies. We invite the Japanese to come to our country. In fact, the Japanese occupy our country, and indeed they occupy all of Southeast Asia. But there's some Thai patriots felt unhappy about the Japanese occupation. They occupy only, not the jure. In theory, we still remain independent, but in practice, they control our country. Although they said that they would ask our permission to pass their troops to Malaysia, Singapore, Burma, and Indonesia. However, there was a Thai movement called Free Thai Movement against the Japanese occupation, and were collaborating very closely with the Allies. Hence, after the war, we were not punished. Japan was defeated, Germany, Italy defeated, but our country remained free because the region, at that time the king was in Switzerland, the region led Free Thai Movement, collaborate with the Allies. That's why we remain free. And then of course the region changed the name back to Siam, briefly. And at that time, the region, Mr. Pridi Phnomyong, who brought democracy to Siam in 1932, he collaborated with other countries around Siam. Those countries were not yet independent. He encouraged them to be independent. He sent troops, which he received from the Allies. He sent troops, weapons, to help the Indonesian for the war independence from the Dutch. He sent troops to help the Vietnamese against the French occupation. And even now, there are 2 battalions in Vietnam called Siam Battalion. And he was very close to Ho Chi Minh. And likewise, he helped the Lao Freedom Movement, the Khmer Freedom Movement. And after the war, Mr. Pridi formed the League of Southeast Asian Nations. Consists of these countries, not yet independent. The headquarters was in Bangkok. Aung San of Burma came himself. Aung San, the hero of Burma. At that time, Burma was not yet independent. Ho Chi Minh sent General Giep, who defeated the French at Dien Bien Phu. General Giep came. Prince Pecharat, leader of the Lao independent movement, came. Philippines, and so on. This creation of Southeast Asian nation. And the idea was that India would become independent soon. China was at that time full of warlords. China would one day become strong. Mr. Pridi foresaw that the Russians would come in a big way, and the Americans would come to Southeast Asia to replace the British. So he feels that these association of Southeast Asian nations would be neutral, would be socialistic, but democratic, in order to be on good terms as equal to India, USA, Soviet Union, China. Unfortunately, the American, which helped all these countries in the Second World War, the American was helping Ho Chi Minh, helping the Free Thai movement. After Roosevelt passed away, Mr. Truman became president. Mr. Truman was a very sincere man, very hardworking man, but if I may say so, he is rather a mediocre, influenced easily by the so-called expert, who told him that the communist threat is something real. The American who refused to back the British Empire, the American who said the Second World War is a war of ending colonialism. But unfortunately, Mr. Truman was persuaded to get involved in the Vietnam War, to back the French imperialism, because the French were defeated by the Vietnamese, and the American came in. And the American regard the associated Southeast Asian nation as a threat, and the American support the Thai military. The Thai military who changed the country to Thailand, who was a war criminal. Now this man came back into power in 1947, reversed the name to Thailand, and yet the Americans support this man. Likewise, Indonesia, after independence, Mr. Sukarno become more and more socialistic. The American helped topple Mr. Sukarno and helped establishing Mr. Suharto. Mr. Suharto was a dictator in Indonesia for 20 years with American support. American call this guided democracy. In my country, likewise, the dictator came, the American call this guided democracy. I mentioned 2 countries. In my country particularly, the American felt that if Siam fell, the whole Southeast Asia would fail, because Vietnam, there was South and North Vietnam, and the North would have won had not the American support of the South. Likewise, Cambodia would remain neutral, but the American helped the Cambodian right wing who pushed Sihanouk out, and Cambodia became entirely under the American control. Laos was also two sides, but in Laos, the communists won. So as you can see, American involvement in this part of the world is very real. At that time, I was a young man returned from England to start a magazine, as Bob said, called Social Science Review. It's a very down name because it's supposed to be academic. But I used this magazine to promote liberal thinking, freedom of speech. It became very popular since, because the Thai public have been told to shut up for 10 years. Then I started this magazine, so it became very popular. But at that time, there was a clause by the dictator: you cannot even criticize our allies. You cannot criticize American allies who had troops in our country, who had air bases in our country, bombing Vietnam. And yet none of the Thai press mentioned anything about it, because they were afraid of dictators. I was not much better. But since our magazine was liberal, progressive, Senator Fulbright made his speech denouncing the American empire, denounced white man burden. He gave figures, how many GIs in my country, how many air bases. In those days, there was no fax, no email. So somebody sent me his speech to me by airmail. I received it, I translated it. I published in our journal, which is very limited, Leadership of 2000. But that article published in the journal was published in all student newspapers all over the country. First time we knew that American troops were there, GIs were there. So it's a kind of, enlightenment for a lot of people. And these and other led to 1923 student uprising, ending the military regime. And at the time, we also forced Americans to withdraw all their troops, their GI from the country. That was 73 in my country. Unfortunately, in 26, the army came back and killed many students, burned many books. Luckily, I was invited to this country for the American bicentennial. I was invited by the Smithsonian Institution to make a speech, and I was going home slowly. I was on my way home. I was staying in London, having a beautiful dinner at a lovely English pub in Hampstead. And then I found out the Thai newspaper mentioned my name. I was arrested in absentia. Many of my students were killed, were tortured, were murdered by the Thai military. My wife was arrested for 1 day, but only 1 day. One of our bookshops, they took all our books, and we became bankrupt. But luckily, I was not home, so I had to be in exile. And luckily again, I have good friends. I was invited to teach at UC Berkeley, Cornell University, University of Toronto. This is just briefly about unrest in my country. But I don't want to talk much about myself. I don't want to talk much about my country, but I just mentioned again that my country had a coup d'etat again 3 months ago. 10 years before that, they had something similarly. And I denounced the dictator at that time. And he didn't have a sense of humor. He wanted to kill me. And I was a brave man, so I escaped. Took me 2 years again. But this time, the present junta, perhaps he has more wisdom. He has not touched me. But I wrote in my Facebook, I did not condemn him, but I told him that he was not wise. In fact, I was very careful with my words. You know, perhaps he was a foolish man to have a coup d'etat. Because coup d'etat means that no more free speech, no more free expression. Without that, you cannot be a decent human being. And I wrote in my Facebook every week or so before I came here, in Thai, and people also translate into English. I have now published those into a book before I left the country. I call it Love Letters to Dictators. As Bob said, I believe in Kalyana Mitra. Kalyana Mitra is a Buddhist term you use to criticize people. I don't regard the dictator as my enemy. I regard he is somebody who is not wise enough. And the Kalyana Mitra would speak to you what you don't want to hear. So I have been writing to him in that term. And I now publish it both in Thai and English, called Love Letters to the Dictators. I was told that the police department had bought 2 copies already. But they haven't sent me anything of that sort. But when our democracy was 75 years old, our democracy came about in 1932. When it reached its 75 years old, I wrote a book called Siamese Democracy, 25 years of Siamese democracy, full of obstruction. The police didn't arrest me, but they confiscated my book. So I challenged them. I charged the police department and the Thai government to the Thai administrative court. And the court was not on my side, it was on the side of the government. So now I appeal. I said, if this country has any meaning, understandable freedom of expression, I should win the case, but it's now pending. So you never know whether you win or you lose, but the point is that any unrest anywhere, in my opinion, as you want my opinion as a Thai intellectual must have moral courage. You must challenge those in power. And this, I must tell you, I learned this from the Quakers, much more than from the Buddhists. The Buddhists are, there are more Buddhists than Quakers in the world. And the Buddhists are wonderful people, but sometimes they keep quiet too much. To keep quiet when there's unrest, I feel that you are not practicing Buddhism, you are practicing escapism. That's why I admire the Quakers, who always speak truth to power, and many of them have been put in jail, but at the same time they are so regard everyone as friends. As you know, the Quakers call themselves the Religious Society of Friends. And in Buddhism also, the best thing in life is friends. And the Quaker and the Buddhists are similar. We believe in non-violence. But as I say, the Quakers are much more forthcoming. I have a friend, Lillian Willoughby. She was 90, and she went to challenge after 9/11, when the U.S. troop went to Iraq. She shaved her head and went to the Pentagon and was arrested. 90. And I'm only 82. You see? So I would be ashamed, if I don't challenge my government and any other government who act in a dictatorial manner, trying to do things, shut people up. Because for me, the great thing for people, you must have liberty, free speech. This I only mention my country. Around my country nowadays, you may see Singapore is a happy country, the most prosperous country in Southeast Asia. But in Singapore, they are all economic animals. There's not a single person who stand up to challenge the government. If they want to challenge the government, they go to Malaysia, come to my country. It's a lovely country to visit. If you stay more than one week in Singapore, you also would become economic animals. Singapore. If you say there's no unrest, then I can go more on Singapore, but since it's a small country, I just mentioned Singapore. Now, Malaysia, both countries claim to be democratic in the British manner. They have election every 4 years. Singapore also have that. But only one party rule so far, the PAP. No opposition, no free speech. The media is controlled by the government. Malaysia is much better. They have 2 or 3 parties, but only one party ruling. Mr. Mahathir Mohamad was Prime Minister for 22 years. And in Malaysia, they have monarchy. But they have many states. The Sultan of each state takes turn to become king every 5 years. They change the king every 5 years. But the Prime Minister remained there 22 years without change. And they have free election. But the free election, you must elect the ruling party. And when you elect the ruling party, you shut up because the ruling party will do everything for you. But right now, Mr. Mahathir has stepped down, and his successor has become unable to run the country. And the opposition party is very strong. I happen to know the opposition party, the leader, since he was a young student leader. You see, the only good thing about me is I'm old, so I know those people are very young. And he became deputy prime minister, and he's now running an opposition party. But they trick him. They charge him of homosexual. And in Islamic country, to be a homosexual is the worst sin. Now they're fighting in court. I hope he will win. I hope he may become prime minister in the democratic tradition. I just mentioned perhaps Burma. Burma was under strong dictatorship since 1962. You may have heard of Aung San Suu Kyi, the lady who received the Nobel Peace Prize. She was in house arrest for 14 years. A wonderful lady. And she practiced Buddhism. To be patient, to be kind. Then, the Buddhist monks in Burma, in fact, we have working in Burma for the last 15 years under strict dictatorship, but we made friends with the Buddhist monks, with Korean Christian, with the Catholic, with the Muslim for 15 years. Now we become good friends. And the monk told me, that they call me Ajahn, Ajahn. We have bad karma in the past life. That's why we have bad dictators. I said, Venerable monk, you have a wrong idea about the teaching of the Buddha. You may have a bad karma in the past life. We don't know. But in this life, we can change things if you restructure your consciousness. You can change your speech, your mind, your action with Kalyana Mitra, with good friends together. You can challenge the government. You can topple them. But the monks took me very seriously. They did just that. If you follow the news in Burma, a few years ago, they called themselves Saffron Revolution. The monks wear saffron robes. They come out, challenging the government, peacefully reciting the Pali Sutta. Pali Sutta is the saying of the Buddha. The Sutta said, a mother willing to sacrifice her life to save her only child. Likewise, we should follow this model, willing to sacrifice our life non-violently for the happiness of all sentient beings. The monks reciting this, a very powerful sutta, and they were beaten, some of them were killed, some of them were tortured, some of them put in jail, some were disrobed, and they kept on doing that. And I must say, this may not be the only factor, but it's a main factor that changed Burma. And partly because Burma was also under too much of the Chinese hegemony. Burma has now opened the country, released Aung San Suu Kyi from house arrest. They now have a democratic form. And it's quite interesting to watch Burma now, whether she has gone away from the devil to the deep blue sea or not. Because now Americans were not allowed to Burma, the EU were not allowed Burma, they condemned Burma, sanctioned Burma. Now they're all going in with aid and with all kinds of things. And now Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola going in. Oh, for me, I feel that's very sad. And unrest starting with these transnational corporations. The same, when Iran was defeated by the American troops, first thing you see in Iran is McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. Most of you may not realize that this is a sign of American imperialism. I could go on, to Indonesia, Laos, Vietnam. But to put it briefly, Southeast Asia on the whole, right now, have been controlled mostly by the Chinese hegemony. The Mekong is a great river running through my country, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. The Chinese control this river. And many of our politicians bow down to the Chinese because of money, because of power. That's why Burma tried to get away from the Chinese. But other countries in South Asia had not been treated that badly, so they're not that aware. At the same time, the Americans, since they were out of the area because they were defeated in Vietnam War, the Americans now want to go back to compete with the Chinese. But if the Americans are not wise, they may not learn from the lesson in Vietnam, as they have not learned anything from Iran or Afghanistan. I wish if the Americans learn to be wiser, perhaps they can deal with the Chinese in a much wiser way. And I think then Southeast Asia would really support the Americans much more than the Chinese. So I leave it at this stage, unfinished talk, so that you can ask questions or challenge me any mistake I made. Thank you for your attention.
Questions?
Yes. Could you comment a little on the violence that has occurred in Burma between the Muslims and the Buddhists?
Very good question. My last talk in Yangon, they just opened the country recently. And my last talk in Yangon a few months ago, there were over 300 people came. The first time, the biggest audience in Yangon. And my talk was on the Buddhist-Muslim dialogue. The Muslim came, the Rohingya, the minority which has been oppressed by everyone, they also came. And my talk was that they're of course violent within the Buddhist-Muslim, but there are also many good things that the Muslim and the Buddhist living together in Burma, in my country. So I think we Buddhists who believe in non-violence should talk to the Buddhist violent, try to change them. Don't regard them as our enemies, try to change them as a good friend. And likewise, there are many, many Muslim non-violent. They should talk to the Muslim violent and then come together, try to change. And last year we had a meeting in Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur is the capital of the Muslim world. We formed a committee, Buddhist, Muslim together. And indeed, we also want to have a world gathering in Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, and the government of Indonesia will support us. So the idea is that when violence takes place, the press build it up, but a lot of non-violent, the press never mentioned. So we try to tell people to have more dialogue and to overcome dialogue. It's not an easy road, but I think it is a possible road. I think we will resolve it, hopefully.
Further questions?
What do you think that we as individual Americans can do to encourage international peace?
What's her question?
Would you repeat your question?
What actions can we do as individual Americans to encourage world peace?
What a very good question. Most of us, whether we are American or non-American, we are controlled by the mainstream mass media. We feel we are right, all right, Jack, you are wrong. I think this is where it's wonderful. You know, we are going to be broadcast in the alternative media. You need that, and on top of that, American, if you feel that you are middle class, well-to-do, you should expose yourself to the oppressed. Many people in America are also oppressed. Not go to help them, not go to learn from them. Once you learn from them, you change your perspective. I speak personally myself. I came from an elitist background, went to England, called to the bar, teaching at London University, and I thought I knew everything. You see, the masses should follow people like me, and of course I studied Pater Republic. I want to be a philosopher king. But once I went to see how the farmers have been oppressed, I changed my perspective. And I think Americans are able to do that, you know. And I'm happy now. So many universities, in the old days, they sent Peace Corps. Peace Corps do many good things. But unfortunately, Peace Corps, the mission at that time was to save the world from communism. But now young Americans go out and they want to learn different culture. They want to listen from the oppressed. This is wonderful. And then, speaking as a Buddhist, you American don't have to be Buddhist. You can be a good Christian, a good Jews, a good atheist, but you need not rely only on your head. You must learn to breathe properly. The most important element in our life is breathing. We breathe 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, non-stop, but we never learn how to breathe. We breathe in a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, and of course advertisement make you feel nobody unless you buy this and that. Once you breathe in properly, you can synchronize your head and your heart, that we, each of us, can empower ourselves. We can really change the world. Not to hate the oppressor, but we must try to destructure the oppressive system. I will speak more on this at the university on Friday night concerning structural violence. Thank you for your question.
Another question?
I just learned about the horrible situation in North Korea of slave labor camps where 150,000 to, in North Korea, where 150,000 to 200,000 people are currently imprisoned. And I just want to know if you have any comments on that situation and whether there's any action being taken to try to change that situation.
To change it, I'm not quite sure the question.
I can repeat it. I just learned about the situation in North Korea where 150,000 to 200,000 people are in slave labor camps from reading this book, Escape from Camp 14. And I just wonder if you have any comment on the situation in North Korea about the slave labor camps.
Yeah, I think, again, very wonderful questions. I happen to be very close to good Buddhists in South Korea. And in those days, you know, from South Korea to go up to North Korea, they were beaten and so on. But now they're more and more open, you see. I think you have to start by cultivating friendship. I have also been invited to North Korea. Of course, as you are invited, you only see the good thing. You don't see the bad thing in any country. But now, people in North Korea and people in South Korea, some of them are very concerned in changing. It won't be easy, but I think it is possible. So don't regard North Korea as the bad guys. You know, the top dictators are pretty bad, but I think since they run the country with dictatorship for some years now, people are bound to challenge them. Even China, much more powerful than North Korea, big brother to North Korea. Now more and more people in China challenging the Communist Party. Of course, some of them are beaten seriously, some of them put in jail, but they are very brave. So I feel that anywhere, once you have people with moral courage, people who care for the truth, and if they learn to do skillfully, non-violently, with more people, any regime, dictatorial regime will collapse. So we have to learn also to be patient.
The paper this morning reported you as saying that we had a corporate democracy in this country.
Yes.
Is there a country that you would consider to offer a model democracy somewhere in the world?
Democracy in the world now is in a very sad state. I don't know, you know Tony Judd, who just died recently. His book was a very powerful book. He said people running democratic country from Britain to anywhere in Europe, from America to Australia, only second-rate, third-rate people running the country. You don't have to believe him, but think about it. You see, David Cameron, who is a British Prime Minister, does not even know the Magna Carta. That's the mother of democracy. Besides, in this country in particular, if you allow people to support election without limiting, I mentioned in the press, Jerry Brown proposed that financial support to any candidate of any party should not be more than $100, either a person or a company. If that is so, the chance of corporation controlling the army, the party will be much less. And if you allow the corporation to support and they pour in a lot of money, of course they want their money back. There's a book now come out. Dick Cheney is the most important vice president ever because he worked closely with the corporations. You don't have to believe me, but that's how I see it. And I'm very honest with you.
Sawadee-ka. You'll remember that in the early 70s, Paul and Ann Ehrlich wrote the book, The Population Bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Are we now beginning to see the effect of too many people on Earth and degrading the natural world on which we depend for our support, so that there are so many desperate people that they're easily recruited to what amounts to chaotic situations any place in the world? Are we beginning to see the effects of just too many people on Earth trying to live within the physical bounds of our natural system?
That's
Thank
a
you.
good remark.
Yes.
I think the question is good remarks. Thank you.
I think we have time for perhaps one or two more questions. Lady in green.
You mentioned that after the colonial powers, the official colonial powers like the British left Southeast Asia, the Americans came in with Coca-Cola and their corporate entities. So are you saying that this is a modern form of colonialism?
What is the last sentence?
Are you thinking that, you mentioned that after the British left,
Yes,
then the Americans came in
yes.
with their corporations and corporate products.
Yes.
So do you see this as an economic type of control or colonialism through economics?
You have to realize that, when Mr. Truman made his inaugural lecture on his presidency, he said colonialism is over. White men should not go into control other peoples. But we must brainwash them. The new independent country, they are underdeveloped. They have to develop like us. We are a developed country, and they would develop like us provided they become democracy. By our definition, Suharto, the biggest dictator was regarded as guided democracy. In my country, big dictator, guided democracy. That the most important is free market. They must allow us to exploit them. I think that is the word development. And the UN, the US even pushed the UN to have a decade of development. And second decade development, the more developed, the gap is rich and poor wider. The rich become richer, the poor become poorer, environmental degradation, and the rich not happy either. So I think we have to change this concept of development, and now it's now called globalization. I will speak more on Friday night. It is advertising, okay?
Our next question, and our TV folks say we have about 8 minutes. Is that okay, Ajahn?
Yes.
It's more of a statement than a question, but colonialism still exists right here in Alaska. The Alaska Native population is 19% of this state, but the jails are filled with 70% Alaska Natives. Colonialism exists in Alaska right now.
That's just a comment, right?
So,
Good comment.
do we have another couple of questions? We're okay on time here.
Hello. So we've heard a lot. We've heard a lot about the situation in Thailand, and it's very confusing for those of us who aren't clear on this whole thing between Prime Minister Thaksin and being accused of corruption. And I'm just wondering if you could perhaps explain a little more about what the details were on that. We Americans like to have a good guy and a bad guy, and and I know it's more complicated than that. But if you could clarify a little bit from your perspective what's been going on there in recent years, that would be interesting.
Last and what we could do, right?
This was a question, I believe, to try to explain the current situation where Thaksin has been accused of corruption, the military has grabbed on, and if I understand, Americans like things simple. So who is wearing the white hat? Who is wearing the black hat?
No, you know, after 9/11, President Bush said that he wants to eradicate all evils. And the Muslims were supposed to be evils. Solzhenitsyn, a great Russian author who received the Nobel Prize for Literature, said, if it's that simple, you know, to see who's evil, who is good, it's not that simple. In all of us, we also have something evil in ourselves. How can we cut the evil in ourselves? So things cannot be simplistic. We have to learn. And the worst enemy is in ourselves. Greed, hate, and delusion. We should learn to transform greed into generosity, hatred into nonviolence, friendliness, and delusion into proper understanding. And that can start easily by proper breathing. Proper breathing. Cultivate peace within. And once you have peace, you can synchronize your head and your heart. You can restructure your consciousness to be more open, to be holistic, to be less naturalistic, to be more humanistic. And only not humanistic, care for all sentient beings, care for Mother Earth, care for trees, river, oceans. I think the world will change that way. The world cannot change simplistic, but the world can change simple way of doing things. And once we change our lifestyle, change our thinking, and I have much hope in this country because American people are smart, particularly young people are wonderful. They're looking more holistically. I happen to be able to teach a lot of American people when they come to my country. They went out to be with the poor, they're changing, and now they also learn how to breathe properly. I think that's the way to change. You cannot change by the big politician, big military, change by all of us. Each of us is a very simple person. Empower ourselves. That's what Gandhi said. You know, not because he, the man he did have the leadership role, but he's able to talk to all the Indian multitude that they can even challenge the British Raj. I'm pretty sure that if Americans are changing fundamentally, linking your heart with your head, learn to be more simple, more generous, I think this country will be a wonderful republic, not be capital RR. It will not be an empire. And even the British Empire finished, you can learn because of hatred and violence. The Roman Empire finished, and the American Empire will finish in a much better way, in a more holistic way. And once America becomes a small republic, I think we should all become friends. No more hegemony.
Let's do one more question, if we have one more question. In the back?
Hello. I was wondering if you could comment on how the younger generation in Thailand has kind of been changing recently. If something that people kind of talk about a lot in the U.S. is how younger people are, becoming really sucked into technology and kind of losing a lot of traditional ways of the country, and if Thailand has been seeing a similar trend maybe, or and how that's affecting the development of the country, and also kind of maybe affecting the current political instability in the country.
Very good, appropriate to be the last question. No, the young people in my country, the mainstream are the same everywhere. They want, good life, sex, marijuana, and whatever. But at the same time, there are young people who challenge this trend. And luckily, we also have a Buddhist background, Buddhist tradition. Some of them are now taking meditation seriously. Some of them challenge the mainstream non-violently. I myself have started the spirit education movement around 15 years. We have some literature out there you can take. We also have started International Network Engaged Buddhists for 25 years. These are not people in the mainstream. The Buddhists in the mainstream could also be dangerous. You know, the Second World War started by Tojo, very devout Buddhist, and he asked the soldier to meditate, sasen, so that they can kill the American more efficiently. But now we have those who engage Buddhists entirely non-violent, entirely respect nature. In my country, the number is growing. The same in Burma, same in Laos. But you have to realize that Laos is a communist country. But the Sangha in Laos operate with autonomy. It's a bit more difficult in Vietnam. But still, the young people in Vietnam also want to link with those alternatives in Laos, Cambodia, Burma. So I have much hope for the young people because they are our future. And that's why, you see, I'm 82 years old. That's why I'm so young, because I learn from the young people. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much for coming to hear Ajahn Sulak speak this evening, and let's give him a real applause.
Thank you.
And Ajahn Sulak will be speaking at Evening at Egan on Friday at 7 o'clock, and his topic there will be on the wisdom of sustainability. So a little bit different topic, but much the same perspective. So again, thank you very much for coming, and another round of applause for Ajahn.
That was activist and author Sulak Sivaraksa speaking about social and political turmoil in Southeast Asia in this Juneau World Affairs Council presentation. It was produced in collaboration with 360 North and recorded September 3, 2014 at 360 in Juneau with support from GCI, Alaska Electric Light and Power, Wastman & Associates, Core Alaska, Hecla Greens Creek Mining, Sea Alaska, and Alaska Power and Telephone.